before we begin though, let me open with a word of prayer, and then we'll go ahead and get started. So, Lord, thank you so much for all these parents who really care about knowing what's going on in youth culture. And I'm really excited whenever we run these events, whenever we run these info meetings, that we have parents who want to come and want to learn. And God, my desire, my hope is that through these things, that it would continue to bridge the gap between parents and kids, that I know all parents really want to happen. So, God, thank you that I get to be in a place where I can research youth culture, just present it. Thank you that I get to work with these students, and they are just phenomenal. I'm so blessed to know them and to work with them and to be a part of their lives. Pray over this meeting, pray over all the information that's shared. Just pray that wisdom would reign and that your goodness would just be present in this information as we go forward and respond to it. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. All right. So we're talking about Snapchat today, and so my purpose in talking about Snapchat, is to provide information on what Snapchat is, what it's used for, and ultimately how we can engage this cultural artifact. Back in college, we just call them cultural artifacts. They're things in culture that we use. How we can engage this cultural artifact with Christian wisdom as caretakers for our adolescents. How's it going, Josh, Crystal? You guys are awesome. So how we can engage this cultural artifact as we are responsible for taking care of the adolescents in our lives. And so that's kind of that's our main goal, that's our purpose. And let's dig in. So what is Snapchat? So Snapchat is a mobile messaging application used to share photos, videos, text, and drawings. The only thing that makes Snapchat different than other forms of texting and photo sharing, does anyone know what the answer is to that?
It's erased.
It disappears.
So students believe.
So students believe, and we'll talk about that.
It doesn't go away.
So the messages disappear from the recipient's phone after a few seconds. So here's what we're going to do. I have some statistics. So I want you guys to guess this with one another. So you guys can look at people next to you. Worked out well, and Corey, I guess you can guess what. You can pick whoever you want.
Yeah, I know.
Oh yeah. All right. Sarah knows these. So yeah, Corey and Julie, if you guys. So how many daily users do you think are on Snapchat right now?
What? In the U.S. or?
No, just all over.
In Canada. 20 billion gazillion.
All right. You guys have a guess?
I had money.
Millions? 210 million. I'm gonna take my time. 210 million daily active users in Q3, and this is just daily users. There's a lot more monthly. But how about this? How average time spent on Snapchat? A day.
6 hours.
6 hours?
6 to 8 hours.
6 to 8 hours?
Or just one person.
25 to 30 minutes a day.
Oh.
Yeah. It adds up though over a week.
Yeah, usually. Oh, okay.
How about the average number of daily snaps? That means messages sent back and forth. 20?
20.
Like total, like in total. Not just one
In the
person.
world?
But like,
Oh. Billions.
20
times
trillion.
210 million.
3.5 billion snaps daily. Then as of March, I'll move to this next one. Snapchat reached 90% of all 13 to 24-year-olds. That's a wide range. And 75% of all 13 to 34-year-olds in the U.S. That's a big number. Next, 75% of Snapchat users are under 34 years old. The next one, you guys can guess this. Longest snap streak, that means daily sent between each other, like snaps between one person and another every day. How many do you think, or how many days in a row do you think people have had a conversation with each other?
365 days.
Longer than a year.
Times 10.
Longer than 2 years.
Oh,
Longer than 3 years.
5 years?
1,457 snaps as of May 2019. And lastly, how many years do you think it would take you to view all the photos shared on Snapchat in the last hour?
Too many. I don't want to do them all.
This is an average. Like, on average, sent in an hour, how long do you think it would take you? The answer is years. 10? If you want candy, I can get you. So, I got a candy box if you want it. Alright, so yeah, these statistics are pretty staggering. Snapchat is a big deal and it plays a big part in youth culture. So it's important that we kind of understand what it's about. And so here's some well, I'll start off by saying benefits. Like why would somebody want to have Snapchat? And it's okay to acknowledge that things. What's that?
It's liking fast.
Yeah, why? And so why would somebody want to use Snapchat? And we can acknowledge that there's some good things about anything, right? There's some good things. There's reasons why people do things, and some of the reasons can be good. And the first one is this social connection, right? Social connection. So you can share stories on your page, kind of like Instagram does. You can share stories that talk about what you're doing. And in fact, one of the reasons Sarah has Snapchat is because her sister-in-law, my sister-in-law as well, shares stories of my baby nephew. And so Sarah loves to be able to watch that. And she also likes to communicate with her sister-in-law through that. And she'll send a picture or a video of my little nephew moving around. What was he doing? He was using the toilet.
He was using the toilet for the first time.
For the first time. And so Snapchat, it's a way to communicate through pictures and through videos, and pictures communicate more than words can sometimes, right? And then also, with the social connection piece, there's something called a streak, which I talked about before, where if you send a snap back and forth each day, you get, it starts a streak. And if you continue on for weeks and months and years, you get you create a sense of pride. And in fact, this sense of pride is so important to adolescents that what they will do, and this actually happened with one of our students. She came to our middle school camp, and she gave her login information for Snapchat to a friend so that her friend could keep up her Snapchat streaks with all of her friends that she had a Snapchat streak with. It's something that's, it's a sense of pride. Of course, we get that. Like, there's a sense of, we have a connection. There's something that we can show for it, right? So social connection, that's a big deal. And I'm sure we can understand that, right? Next, that's kind of unique that Snapchat has that other messaging apps don't, is that filters are fun. So they have like a dog face filter. They have, I don't know, like an alien filter. I'm looking at Sarah because she has it and she knows it. They're fun. And they have other filters that are just kind of unique and funny and make people laugh.
And pretty.
And they're pretty. They can be pretty too. Right? And then the last one, which would be it could be a benefit in some ways, and I'll give one example. Why I put this here, but I put it on the next one too. That messages disappear. Messages disappear. You wonder why would you put that on a benefit? Well, when I was working with high school students in Reading, there was a student, I don't remember his name, but he came once, and he said, "Hey, my story is I have two moms that raised me up all my life," and I was like, "Interesting. I'd love to hear more about that." And before he left, he couldn't really, he didn't have the time to tell me then. He said, "Hey, do you have Snapchat?" "Oh, I don't." And he said, "Well, that's a bummer because that's the only way I'd be able to communicate with you what my life story is. Because if my parents found out that I was talking about them, I'd get in trouble, which I know, and we're going to talk about later. That's not a good thing in most cases. But in this case, when this kid wants to reach out to somebody, he's scared that his parents will judge him. I'm hesitant to put on benefits, but I will, because there are some ways that God can use it, right? And I think that should be acknowledged, that God can use anything. But next, we're going to flip to the dark side of Snapchat, right? We're going to look at some of the things that Snapchat is known for, that Snapchat has, that are reasons for concern, that are cause for concern, that are cause for second thoughts. So, on the dark side of Snapchat, first one is secret messages. All right, that there's some things that adolescents don't want anyone else to see for various reasons. And this may not be the case. This may not be the reason that your child has Snapchat, but it's something that's there, right? It's something that they can do. They can send something that no one else can see. In fact, sometimes people will send messages and just to say, this is what's going on in my life, and I want only you to know about it. You know, I only want you to know about it. I know leaders on this Facebook group that I'm a part of with other youth pastors, they use Snapchat, and it's a way for students to share what's going on in their lives and feel safe about that. Which is, but it's also a dark side because it's used to share messages that aren't appropriate. And we'll get to some of those. Second one is this comparison and image. This is similar in any social media platform. Right? When you see people who look like they're doing great, they're living great, they're eating great, they're looking great, and you're wondering, I don't really know too much. Do I measure up to this? And you guys are all parents, so you guys understand in some ways, especially if you parent a girl, understanding, trying to work with how do I help them have a positive sense of self. Well, Snapchat, if they don't enter into Snapchat with an already positive sense of self or an identity in who God's declared them to be, Snapchat might be hard for them. Next, which is a little bit more serious, is sexting. And sexting, a definition of that is sending someone a sexually explicit photograph or messages via mobile phone. And this isn't new. This isn't a new thing that happened because Snapchat came out. It's been around for a long time, ever since mobile phones were able to send messages. But because of the fact that Snapchat makes messages disappear, it's often been associated with and it's often been assumed to be an app designed for the use of sexting. And what's important to communicate with adolescents, right? What's important to communicate with your son or daughter is that nothing that anybody shares is really a secret once it's shared. It might disappear, but what somebody can do if they have the right kind of phone and they know how to do it is they can screenshot it, right? Once it's sent, they can find ways around this to save a photo that's sent, and once it's sent and once it's there, other people can do whatever they want with it. And that's an unfortunate reality. Another thing with this is that a guy named Richard Hickman, he is a forensic scientist, a long time ago discovered that Snapchat doesn't actually delete the photos or messages after they're sent out. He was actually able to kind of hack in and find that there's a folder where he could find this stuff. And he wasn't trying to look for anything bad, he was just trying to see if they were standing up to their promises. And so they actually Snapchat got sued over this. And I'm not sure where they're landing at now, but it stands to reason that whatever's sent doesn't actually disappear. And then one last thing about this is that there's a function on Snapchat now called My Eyes Only. And it's something where users can secretly save photos and password lock it for privacy. And only they can see it. That's why it's called My Eyes Only. And I would assume that Snapchat, not being a Christian company, but being a company that kind of wanted to say, all right, we want to protect you, was kind of made it as a way for some people to save photos and not get out. But still, it's not. I don't actually think it's right. I don't think it's actually helpful to anybody. So that's one of the dark sides of Snapchat is sexting. Now the next one, which is also not new to social media, which is also not new to messaging and internet interaction, is cyberbullying. Cyberbullying is the use of electronic communication to save photos and, use of electronic communication to bully a person, typically by sending messages of an intimidating or threatening nature. So if you've ever been on Facebook and seen an angry stream of comments belittling somebody or attacking somebody's character, that's cyberbullying. And this is not a new thing because there's some sort of anonymity that comes from typing something on a screen or typing something on a phone and not having to interact with the person that you say something to. Right? So this is something that's been around, and it's definitely something to talk about with your son and daughter. Like, hey, have you experienced this? Is this something that you've done? Or it's just something to be aware of. And it's always good to talk about that. And cyberbullying, actually, Snapchat is not the #1 source of cyberbullying anymore. It's actually Instagram is the #1 source of cyberbullying now. They found. Next one, which is a serious issue, but for different reasons, is predators. That because it's a app associated with sexting, that people go on there to bait and trap people and coerce them into getting to a place where they can kidnap them and put them into sex trafficking. So this one is, of course, a serious issue. As long as your son or daughter knows the people that they're Snapchatting, knows the people that they're friends with, it's a very small chance that this is going on for them. But it's just something to be aware of, and I don't want to pass over it. Right? I don't want to be passed over it, and I trust that all of you are able to say, hey, do you know all the people that you're interacting with? And I have some questions that you can ask your son or daughter, and it covers that really well, better than I could. The last thing I want to mention as we go to the next part is the Discover page. And in most social media websites, what you get, especially on Facebook's known for this incredibly, is you get to see all the same stuff that you want to see. So if you have a certain political belief system, you will see mostly things that align with your political system. That if you post about stuff like that, or you like things that align with your views, it'll pop up. If you if you like more Christian material, you'll find more Christian material on your Facebook page. Well, Snapchat is a little bit different. On the Discover page, you can go, and it's one of the swipe left or swipe right things, and it's just tabloids. It's tabloids from BuzzFeed, it's tabloids from, where do I have a full list here? I do not. It's in one of the things I can hand out. But it's a bunch of different things, and one of them is like Teen Vogue, and I said other one, it's
BuzzFeed,
Pop Shooter, and Cosmopolitan, right? Is that not Cosmo?
Well, there's a cute version of that. Yeah.
Anyways, and typically what they have on this page is suggestive, sometimes just suggestively sexual material for people to click on and just read through the article. Usually it's like a bait, like a clickbait. Click on that and you read it through and you're like, oh, whatever. But you can unsubscribe from these things. That's something that they've allowed. You can't unsubscribe, so if your student knows what he or she's doing, they're probably not looking at that. They're probably saying, no, I don't want that, but it's available. And the concern with this, and something that we're going to go to next, it's very important, is that they present ideas that influence worldview. They influence the way that they see the world around them. They influence the way that they interact with the world around them. And that, I think, is the biggest thing that all social media does to not just us, but especially to the adolescents that we are around every day. And so that's why we're going to go to the next bit. We're going to talk about what the real battle is. The real battle isn't against Snapchat. You guys know the real battle isn't against your son or daughter, although sometimes it feels like it, trying to get them up in the morning, trying to get them to shower every day, sometimes. But the real battle isn't against them. The real battle isn't even against the people who made Snapchat or the people who make these articles that they see on the Discover page. They're not the real enemy here. Who is? Paul tells us in Ephesians chapter 6. For our struggle, he says, our struggle, our wrestling, is not against flesh and blood, not against a person, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. That there is a force on this earth, there is a bend on this earth that we all have within us that leads us away from how God designed the world to be. And as long as sin exists in this world, and it will until Christ comes again, there will always be opportunities for anybody to turn away from Him. And so this is what we're battling against when it comes to Snapchat. Right? This is what we're battling against. And so we're going to look at these dark powers real quick, and it might get a little bit deep, but I'm trying. I want to. The reason I want to go deep with it is so that when we come to a solution, it can be deep as well, right? And so the dark powers, the philosophies, the underlying ideologies, the underlying thoughts that go in to what they're receiving. And the first one is this: it's something called humanism. It's an outlook or system of thought attaching prime importance to the human rather than divine or supernatural matters. That attaches prime importance. That means that my life, my experience is more important than what God has for me. It's more important than what is best for my future. That I want what I want now. And so I'll send out a message that only I know what's sent, only they know what's received, and then no one else it's not going to matter to anyone else. Or I'm going to receive a message, only I get to see it, and it's not going to matter because they're not even thinking about what God sees. They're not even thinking about what that's doing to their life, doing to their future. And of course, it's the worst case scenario, but that is one of the ideologies that is presented as people use Snapchat. And so, if your student is smart, and I know all you guys, I know all your kids, and they're really intelligent, and I'm sure they're able to say that they may not recognize that it's, oh, this is humanism, but they might be able to say, you know, I know that God sees what I'm sending, God sees what I'm receiving. I'm not going to buy into this. But this is something that is being presented. And this is what a guy says about this ideology, of myself above all else. He says this. He says the humanity of sin is one, though consisting of nothing but individuals. Meaning that in a sinful life, in a sinful way of living, we're nothing but individuals who have chosen to be apart from other people. That I might be right next to somebody else, but if I've sinned against them, I am an individual, they are an individual, and there's nothing between us but the gap that I've created by the wrong that I've done them. Right? There's nothing but individuals in a humanistic or a humanist mindset. That's all about what I'm receiving, it's all about what I'm sending, it's all about what I'm doing, it's all about just me. The second one is this, and maybe this is more familiar, something called hedonism, which is promotes pleasure as the highest of virtues. Right? That what you sin whatever you want, do whatever you want, for we die tomorrow, is the idea of hedonism. And this comes from the culture that we live in that doesn't believe in God, right? If you don't believe in God, then you have to have some sort of value that you place above all else. And usually that lands on either myself, the government, or my collective friends. And if I am the highest value in my life, then of course I want to experience the most pleasure that I can have. If God's not in the picture, then of course I want to experience the best pleasure I can have. And this is not the case because we know there's freedom. All right, so we're going to switch to what is kingdom virtues, right? What are the things that as citizens of the kingdom of heaven that stand against what they're learning? And the first one is this, that the kingdom of God is a community of people, community of individuals who exist for one another. And you guys get this. And marriage doesn't work if a husband isn't for his wife, or a wife isn't for her husband. If it's me or you, then it doesn't work. It's not a community. It's a divided place. But instead, if it's me for you, if my life is oriented as I want to be for you, I want to help you succeed, I want to help you thrive, I want to help you grow, that's what the kingdom of God looks like. And that's what our families look like, right? This is the ideal of what we want our families to be. We want to lead people, right? We want to lead people from me or you to me for you. Right? That way, when I'm sending a Snapchat, I want to be not just thinking about myself, but I want to think about the person I'm sending a Snapchat to. I want to think about the person it might affect. I want to think about my family, that if they saw what I was sending, I want them to know that they can trust me and that I can trust them. I want to be for them. I want to be for them. And the second one is this, to address hedonism, that God made things to be enjoyed. Right? He made things to be enjoyed, and for that reason, pleasure is meant to be enjoyed. But it's meant to be enjoyed with wisdom and moderation. Right? I can't just drink 5 2-liter sodas, even though I really like soda. Right? I can't play football all week long. Right? Pleasure is meant to be enjoyed with wisdom and moderation. And of course, that's something that you guys communicate pretty well, I'm sure. But this is what Paul says. I have the right to do anything, you say. I have the right to do anything. Christ has saved me, I have the right to do anything. But not everything I do, not everything is beneficial. I have the right to do anything. But not everything is constructive. No one should seek their own good, but the good of others. This is what we ought to do. And at the very end of this chapter, he says, in everything you do, do it to the glory of God. Everything you do. Right? Because enjoying what God has made becomes sinful when we abuse the boundaries He designed to keep us in. And so, that kind of concludes the me talking part. Some of you guys are like, thank God. I hope. Or I hope not, I don't know. But here's what I have. I don't know if I have enough. If you guys would like this, I have on the back, you guys can just rip off the back if you want. But there are 2 pages here with a recap of what's in this thing. This is totally different than what I was saying. But on the last page, if you guys would like this, I can print out either these last 2 pages or the whole thing. I have 5 copies and I'd love to print out more. But on the very last page is this. These are discussion questions. These are incredible. I read through them. I actually gave them to Caleb to read over, and he said, these are phenomenal. And I bought this online. I didn't make this up myself. I'm not that great, promise. But they asked general questions like, what do you like about Snapchat over other platforms? Just engaging in conversation. One of the questions that they asked, which I love, is what's the difference between privacy and secrecy? What does God's Word say about both? Right? And goes through popularity, safety, ideas, bullying, and more. So, does everyone want one? I can hand out more. You guys might have to share, and if you guys want more, I'd love to hand out more. But, you want one? Go. All right. Oh, perfect. I have enough.
Thank you.
No problem. I'll print out more for anyone who cannot make it. So, yeah, but my suggestion, again, if you're here last time, my goal in this is never to inform or never to tell. Because I'm not a parent. I would be terrible, probably at being a parent. but my goal is to inform and to affirm. And so these are just ways to engage in a conversation. I want, like, because I know as a parent, you want your son or your daughter to thrive. You want them to grow. You want them to exceed. You want them to be a Christ follower in the world that they live in. And so those questions, I encourage you to do that. I want to read through it. Does anyone have any questions? And then I have one last thing. But does anyone have any questions? Oh, sorry.
I do.
Yeah.
I guess there's a tracker thing
Mhm.
that is on there that
Mhm.
they can just randomly see where anybody is at any given time.
Yes.
Are you familiar with that?
Yeah, actually, that's in that packet, and I didn't put that in there. I should have actually, but there's a way that you can set it to be so that certain people, certain friends, can see where you're at. It might be all of your friends. It might be some of your friends. You can set up location tracking on it. One way to disable that is you just disable location tracking for that app. So you can go into settings and you can go under Snapchat and at least on iPhone you can click off. Like I don't want people to know where I'm at. You can turn that off. But yeah, that is a big deal as well. Especially when it comes to predators, that if they add people that they don't know, they can see where they're at. So that is a deal, and that is a big deal. Yeah. So, all right, what I have lastly, and I guess this is going to open up for more questions, but just some questions for further discussion. Just talk. We have about a couple more minutes. But first, do any of you use Snapchat? What do you think of it? Yeah, what do you think of it?
I use it just to contact an aunt, my
Yeah.
sister, so it's really just for family, and then my son. And I think it's fine because
Yeah.
I use it in the right way. But it is also now having a son who just got a phone.
Yeah.
It's very scary. So he tells me things like, "Hey mom, you can look at anybody in Fallon's pictures," and I'm like, "What?" Like he literally can pull up these pictures of people he's not even friends with.
Oh wow.
So I was trying to look through my phone to figure out how to disable it, and I can't figure it out.
Yeah.
So it's a little scary.
Is it just the pictures you post on Snapchat?
So he was showing me that so if he searches in Fallon, Nevada, you can just see people who have posted in the location.
Mm-hmm.
So
On anything?
from Snapchat.
Oh.
Yeah, probably just to a story, right?
Yeah, there's certain
Yeah.
types of stories that you can share to, and it would probably be shared to anyone or everyone, and then share
Gotcha.
to certain groups,
Yeah.
share to a location, like.
Yeah. And I wouldn't be able to confirm this, but I would assume that because it's public, it would be
Yeah.
monitored more.
Right.
That's my guess, but I'm not sure. Sarah, do you know?
I don't know too much about that
Alright.
aspect.
Because that'd be something I would want to look into for Snapchat.
Yeah,
how
he
they.
just told us about it like in the last few days.
Yeah.
So I've been trying to figure it out. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
I have seen it, it's on the map.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's if you zoom in or like if you zoom out and there's like red spots, if you click on them it'll pull up to people's stories, or if you zoom in there will be blue spots and you click on them it'll pull up people's stories.
Huh.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So there's like, you see on mine right now, there's a bunch of different colors and stuff.
If you have an Apple TV, we can see what's going on.
Yeah, no, we're not gonna do that yet.
That'd be funny.
See some
Or
random
put it
guy.
on the map.
Thank you.
That'd be funny. Yeah. Does anyone else? Yeah. Does anyone else have Snapchat? What do you guys think of it? Like.
I had it once.
Yeah.
I looked for it and I can't find it. I don't like it. Just
Yeah.
I don't want to use it. I didn't have any reason or anything. But I don't think Savannah has it, but I think Emma has it.
Hmm.
I got it because I thought I would try to use it with them.
Yeah.
And then I just was like, there's too many other things like Twitter and Instagram.
Yeah.
I can't keep up with all this stuff.
We use it, I like it because,
Yeah.
Zach being
Japan.
Yeah.
We used to watch videos and
Yeah.
stuff that he's not allowed to put on Facebook or share, so we can.
Oh, that's awesome.
But we communicate with the kids.
That's probably another reason why like the secret messages, like, because you could just send that and just
It doesn't go anywhere.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it goes to wherever it goes.
Yeah.
But
But it's
so we can put it on
appropriate and-
Facebook for everybody to see, yeah.
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 And the U.S. government's not going to read that and just monitor that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a computer dummy, so by the time I get to it, it's already been,
Yeah.
distributed between the
It's been
family.
filtered by, like, 5
I'm
people.
going, I don't like Snapchat, you can't see me.
And it's too fast.
Yeah.
I don't know how to work it.
What about how about this question? How do we lead someone thinking to grow from me or you to me for you? And I'm sure that's a question that you probably have, but maybe phrase it differently. Like, how do I get my kid to stop thinking about it's just me or you, to instead think me for you? Like, I want to be for you. How have you guys found that? Like, how do you guys try that, or what experiences have you found that worked or didn't work? Because I think this could be a big one for Snapchat. Of I want to think about my future. I want to think about other people that I sense them to.
Not in terms of Snapchat, but think about how or what you're doing or saying.
Mm.
If you don't want somebody else to do or think or say about that, about you,
Yeah.
then don't do it about them.
Yeah.
I've always told my kids, when I point a finger at you, how many are pointing back at me on that hand? So make sure I've taken the log out of my eye before I think at you
Yep.
for the same thing.
All right. So the next question, I think we've kind of bounced around a different times, but do you think it's possible for someone to use Snapchat with wisdom? You guys kind of heard, some benefits, then a lot of kind of dark things about it. But do you think it's possible for somebody to use Snapchat with wisdom? Would it be different if it's an adult or a teenager? Like an adult?
I think so.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I think you can share, maybe
Yeah.
make funny videos and share with
Yeah.
them, just not to make fun. But and it also has a really good camera feature.
Oh, yeah.
You can take good pictures.
Yeah. I'm not looking for a specific answer. I'm just
Yeah, I think so.
yeah.
I think you can use any social media with wisdom
Yeah.
or without.
Yeah.
So it's not just Snapchat, it's all of them.
Yeah. And the reality is that most chat apps, whether it's Messenger or Instagram or whatever, there's you can find a way to use a secret messenger thing, right? And so it's possible to be unwise on any platform. Yeah. And ultimately, right, it comes down to trust. Yeah, I mean, which kind of leads to the last question. What's the difference between privacy and secrecy? Like, I read that question, it's not my question, it's on this little thing, and that's a good question. What's the difference between privacy and secrecy?
Privacy is protecting yourself. Secrecy is doing or saying something that you don't want everybody to know.
Like keeping something from somebody else, yeah. Let me ask this question, and I don't have a right or wrong on this, but what level or to what extent does a teenager have a right to privacy? That's a question that I just kind of thought of when I was looking through this, and I'm just interested. Like, I don't know the answer to that. But to what extent does a teenager have a right, I say quote unquote, to privacy?
I
It's
feel like
respect between the parent and the child,
Yeah.
how they respect one another. And the communication ability there.
Yeah.
Because once that privacy is violated, then it becomes secrecy.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you.
It's okay. I always think that I'm okay with them having privacy until I see things start to go south, and I've always let my kids know that me and Dad have the ability to get in your phone and get anything we want. So just so you know that we don't want to do that, because I really don't want to know that stuff that they're dealing with
Yeah.
very much. But when you start to see things heading south, at that point, I think it becomes a parent's kind of obligation to, maybe they don't have to get in the phone and read stuff, but they need to start taking steps in some manner to, where it might violate their privacy,
Yeah.
because it's a safety thing.
Yeah, something like Caleb mentioned was, he's like, if I have a kid, or whenever I have a kid one day, anything they do is ultimately my responsibility till they turn 18. And so, of course, I'm gonna say, I have the right to access whatever you're doing. That's his perspective, which I found interesting. Because on one level we want them to be individuals, and privacy helps with that. But the other time we want them to be wise individuals, and so long as we can, right? We want to be able to help them do that. So I'm sure you guys have your different ways of doing that, and I applaud you for doing all that you do, for bringing your kids up to wherever they are right now, and they're awesome. So
Building on what the other parent said, with the whole privacy thing, if you've trained them and raised them the right way and you've given them that, guilt will get to them and they will come to you and say, I did X when I should not have done X because
could be the
I
case.
knew it was wrong. Because my older one did come to me and say that.
Yeah. I remember sometimes I'd feel guilty, but I just wouldn't tell my parents that my individualism would kick in, and I would hold on to it.
And that's why your wife tells your parents.
That's my wife. Right.
I was a very good kid growing up, and I didn't do anything wrong, but I did not tell my parents stuff that they would have wanted to know.
Yeah.
So I can say I did all the right stuff, but there was stuff I totally hid from them.
Absolutely. So, yeah, and each kid is different too. Right? You can always lead, as I've been learning with working with high schoolers and middle schoolers, is you can lead a horse to water, every week, but they have to be the one who wants to drink from it. And so, I applaud you guys again for all that you do. You guys are incredible parents. Let me know if you have any other questions, either now or later. It's about 8:23, 8:25, but go ahead and close.